So first of all, step number one, we want to make sure that we actually schedule this type of meeting, okay? The meeting where we are going to be focused on the work. So step one is to schedule the meeting. And this can be your weekly meeting, or I'm probably more of a fan on this type of meeting being a monthly meeting because it's usually going to be a 2-hour meeting. So we're going to schedule a 2-hour meeting to help us identify the work and begin to actually solve some of these problems that we are noticing that are coming up in the company. That for one reason or another, we don't have a system to solve it. We just have people solving problems. Okay? And again, it's not that that's wrong. It's just if people are the only ones solving your problems, then you always have to have those people in place. And if they can't come to work one day, well, we can't solve that problem today. If they leave and go someplace else, well, you're screwed because they took all the solutions with them. So we want to make sure that we get solutions written down. So number one, we want to make sure that we schedule, and I'm probably on this, you're probably going to start out with a weekly, but eventually you can move to a monthly type of 2-hour meeting where you're going to be identifying this work, okay? And here's what you're going to be doing in the meetings. When you are putting these meetings together, I want to strongly encourage you to have your leadership team together with you. Now again, if you're a small company, you just have 3, 4, 5, 6 employees, 10 employees, you may want to gather everyone together. But if you've got 20, 30 employees, there's no need to get everyone together in this meeting, okay? This meeting is perfect for about 6, 7 people at one time in a meeting. If you're a solopreneur and you're all by yourself, then this is a great meeting for you to do all by yourself. Grab a whiteboard and get started. It's probably going to take you about 2 hours to do this meeting. So here we go. So our next steps is the people that we are going to gather, okay? We're going to gather the leadership team. So gather your leaders. It's a great way when you are doing, because what we're going to do here is some type of a type of a workshop model. So we're going to bring people together and take them through a workshop. This type of thing is going to be wonderful for you to help encourage your team to bond in unity. Also, it's going to help the company together as a team. It's going to unite people. When people have more of a say in what's going on in the company, there definitely tends to be much more of a sense of ownership for the activities that are going on in the company. Also, it's going to create synergy when you get the same people in the room as you are gathering your team. And what we're going to do here is ask them, what are the key problems? What are the 1, 2, or 3 problems, okay? So we're going to ask 1 to 3 main issues that they see in the company that is limiting them from being able to do the work that they need to do. It's limiting them from being able to produce the product or produce the service that you're wanting to produce as a company. You guys, this is huge. And do not do this, okay? Don't get everybody around a table and say, let's just talk a little bit, all right? Let's just have conversation. I want you to talk. So what do you think, Bill? Bill says something and then Susie jumps in and goes, well, I don't know about that. Or Susie goes, yeah, I feel the same way, okay? What we want to do is ask them to write it down, okay? Write down. So we're going to give them 3, 4, 5 minutes to write down their top 3 issues that they have. This is where we are identifying the work. Their top 3 issues. Have them write it down. Once they have written it down, let's see here. I think we're actually on to number 3 here. I'm going to come up here to number 3. As they have written it down on their pieces of paper, now what we're going to do is we're going to go around the circle and have everybody say one at a time, what are the 3 issues that you have? Okay? So we're going to start with Bob. Bob, what are your 3 issues? And what I want him to say, catch this, what I want him to say is what he's written down. I'm not interested in Bob going into a long dialogue. I'm not interested in him standing up and talking about all of his woes and all of his problems. I want him to say what he has written down. And as he says, as Bob says, this is my number 1, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in order, but this is number 1 problem, number 2, and number 3. What you want to do as the leader on the whiteboard is write it on the board. Nice and big. Okay? So now Bob has given his 3 issues, and we've written them down on the board. Now we're going to go to Susie, all right? Susie's going to talk about her problems. Now here's the key. If Bob has already used one of Susie's issues, if Bob has already mentioned it, if it's already on the board, Susie, the rule here is that Susie can't bring it up again. It's already been said. There's no need to say it again. Again, this will save you so much time, and it will save you from falling into people's political agenda. If somebody wants to rehash and go over stuff that's already been discussed, chances are pretty good that they've got an agenda. They're trying to manipulate some emotions to get their way. So once again, if it's already been written on the board, there's no need for you to go over it again. It's already there. We can move on. Does that make sense? Okay? So now what we've done is we've gathered our leaders. They have each written their 3 main issues, and they have written it down on paper, and now we're going around the circle, and we are asking each of them to say, what are your issues? Number 4 here, once we have gotten all of the issues written down, and they're all on the board, now what we want to do is we've got to find out what's the priority. What are the main issues of all of these that we have? And if you have 6 or 7 people in the room, chances are pretty good that you're going to end up with probably 10 to 15. I don't know that you'll end up with a full 20, but you might. But 10 to 15 issues that you have written on the board. Now the idea is, again, we're identifying the work. So our next step is to simply say, okay, which ones are we going to tackle first? Which ones are the most important to us? So what we're going to do, again, don't need to have a discussion at this time, but what we need to do is, of each of these issues, we're going to ask everybody, what are your top 3 of what's on the board? What are the top 3 that you see need to be solved? And put them in order. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Okay? So here at number 4, we are going to, I guess one way we could do this is say we are going to vote for number 1. And so what we'll do, we'll go back over here to Bob, okay? Or you can start the other way, doesn't matter. We're going to come back over here, Bob, and we're going to say, okay, Bob, now that we've taken a few minutes for each person around the table to come up with their number 1, their number 2, and number 3, Bob, what was your number 1? And what we're looking for from Bob is, my number 1 was this, what's written on the board. Again, I'm not looking for Bob to start going into some long monologue on his problems and why number 1 and why this and why that. I just need him to identify which one. All right? So Bob says, well, Clay, up here on the board, I'm going to go with my number 1 issue is we just don't have enough sales. All right? We just don't have enough people that are selling. Okay, that's cool. That'll be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hash mark right here for Bob saying this is what he chose his number 1. And then I'm going to go to Susie. I'm going to say, Susie, what was your number 1? And Susie's going to say, well, Clay, I had the same one. Okay, oh, very good. So there's 2 votes for that one. And then I'm going to go to Manuel. I'm going to say, Manuel, which one for you? And Manuel's going to go, I don't have that one. I have a different one. So I'm going to put a hash mark on that. And as we go around the circle, everyone gets to have an opportunity to vote on what their number 1 problem or what their number 1 issue is going to be. Eventually, you'll have, of these 15 or 20, it'll probably just be 2 or 3 that will kind of be in the running for the very first problem that you're going to tackle. Whichever one has the most votes for number 1, that's the one we're going to tackle first. Does that make sense? So now we have identified the work. And this is where we begin to tap into Gino Wickman's system out of Traction, where he talks about his IDS system. I stands for identify, D stands for discuss, all right, and then the S stands for solve. So now what we're going to do, once we have identified, done the I piece, and this is the number one thing that we are going to work on for this next month or over this next 10, 15 days. Now that we've identified it, now we want to move to step number 5, where we are going to discuss the solution. As a team, we are going to break this sucker down into steps. We're not just going to say, well, the solution to this sales problem is we're going to have more sales. Okay, that's nice. That's the outcome. But the thing is, how are we going to do that? What are the steps that need to be involved? So we need to identify, break down the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many steps there's going to be. We have to break it down into the steps that are going to be involved in solving the problem. Guys, this is a powerful thing. You're getting input from different people on what the steps should be. It leads to some great and lively discussion on how to solve problems. Another little offshoot of this is you are training your leaders, you're training your team how to solve problems the way that you solve problems. Again, most of the time, workers and team builders and even managers so often, they don't know how to solve problems, okay? They know how to cause problems, but they don't know how to solve problems. And so often we as leaders get frustrated with our workforce because we just think, how come you guys can't solve these problems? It's like what I do all day. It's a natural thing for me to solve problems. That's right, you are a leader and you think like a leader. Leaders solve problems, they take actions. But most of workers and most of our trainers and team builders, they don't solve problems. They just do the work that's right in front of them. And if something breaks, if something doesn't work, they raise their hand and they go, it's broke. And they come and look for somebody up at this level to come and solve the problem for them. Okay? So now that we have discussed what our steps are going to be, let's see here. Yeah, the steps 1, 2, 3, 5, however many steps there are going to be. Now we begin to move to, let's see, number 6. Now what we need to do is simply start to activate the solution. So in our discussion, we have talked about all of the pieces that are involved to get more sales. If there needs to be phone calls involved, if there needs to be the generation of the leads and how we're going to move from generating the leads to converting the leads into customers or into clients. We've gone through the steps and we've talked about how we're going to do each step. Now what we need to do is actually activate the solution. So what we have to do here is delegate the solution. Now that we have this system in place, we're going to delegate the system to an A player. This is another very common mistake. Once we have come up with a system, we have taken the time to plan, to organize, to put things step by step into a wonderful system to solve the problem. Then what we do is we delegate that system to a C player or a B minus player. And they don't know how to do it. They just don't follow through. They don't get it done. And they come back and they go, yeah, I wasn't able to do it. It was hard and it was this and this. And so we start changing the system because the C player wasn't able to do it. And if we're not careful, again, I see this so often. We start designing systems for C players. And guys, that is a terrible place to be because nothing seems to work. No matter how you design things, no matter how many times you train, no matter how many times you go over it, they just aren't able to get it because they're C-level players. So we have to make sure that once we come up with our system, once we come up with our solution, that we delegate it to an A player. Somebody that we know is going to be able to follow through, somebody that has that personal energy, somebody that has that drive, someone that has that ability to follow the system. Okay? Again, I've done this before where you give your solution to someone, and they come back and go, yeah, it didn't work. It's like, okay, well, did you do step 1? Yes. Did you do step 2? Yes. Did you do step 3? Well, no, I didn't have time to do step 3, so I just went, okay, how about step 4? Did you do that? Well, I just thought step 4 was kind of silly, so I didn't do step 4. So it's like, oh, okay. So it didn't work, but the problem was you didn't do the system. This would be a C player. You've got to give it to an A player who is going to stick with the system, use their PhD, pig-headed discipline to stick with the system. Now that they have activated and they have walked through the system, okay, now they are going to report back. You definitely want to here. We are going to set a time frame for this A player to run the system. It could be a day, could be a month, however long it takes to walk out this system, okay? But they are going to run through the whole thing, play through the entire thing, probably 2 or 3 times, and they are going to, as you set this time to walk through the system, they will come back and report the results. It's almost like a little show and tell. So they come back into our scheduled meeting and they say, okay, here's what I have found. I've worked through this system real time using real humans, all right, in our company. I've taken through step by step by step, and here are the changes that I would suggest. So we report results, and here is where we discuss our edits, how we're going to change. We had it step 1, 2, 3, and 4, but what we actually need to do is kind of go like 1, 4, 2, and 3 type of thing, okay? So now we are reporting. So where we want to go here is we want to talk a little bit about what this report is going to look like when you are in your meeting.